Ever feel like you just hit a wall when you have to plan something?
Like when I'm packing for a trip and I just end up stuffing everything in my suitcase.
Mm.
We're trying to organize a project at work and it feels like there are a million little pieces.
Yeah.
It's like our brains just weren't made for that kind of heavy lifting.
Right.
But what if AI could handle all that planning for us?
Well, that's what researchers are trying to figure out. And today we're taking a deep dive into some new research that really puts AI's planning skills to the test.
We're looking at this thing called PlanBench, which is basically like an obstacle course for AI, but instead of hurdles and walls, it's all about logic puzzles and seeing if AI can, well, think strategically.
And you're not going to believe this, but one of the ways they're testing this is with dot blocks.
Blocks.
Yeah, like those wooden blocks you probably played with as a kid. Oh, okay, I see.
It might seem kind of basic, but getting an AI to actually plan out how to stack blocks, like really think strategically about it, turns out to be way more revealing than you might think.
Yeah, I mean, when we plan things as humans, we don't really think about it, right?
Well,
It's like our brains just do it automatically. We navigate a crowded room or we pack a suitcase efficiently without even realizing all the complex calculations going on in the background.
exactly.
But for AI, replicating that kind of intuitive, flexible planning, that's a whole other ballgame. It's incredibly difficult. And that's where these blocks come in. Researchers have created this virtual block world, basically a simulated environment, where the AI has to manipulate these blocks to solve different puzzles. And what they found is that even our most advanced AI systems, the ones that can write poems and translate languages, they really struggle with this.
It's true, and I think what's really striking is that these AIs, they can do these amazing things that seem so much more complex than stacking blocks.
I know, right?
But then you give them these puzzles that, frankly, most humans could solve without breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
And they just get stuck. They fall into these loops of trial and error, moving blocks around randomly instead of actually understanding what they're trying to achieve.
So it's like they're more focused on the doing than the thinking, right?
Exactly. Like they haven't quite grasped the difference between just moving the blocks around and actually solving the puzzle.
So how do you make the puzzle harder for an AI? Make the blocks heavier?
Well, the researchers did something pretty clever. They created what they called Mystery Blocksworld.
Okay, Mystery Blocksworld. That sounds a little ominous, like something out of an escape room.
A little bit. Basically, they took those same block puzzles, but instead of using plain English instructions, they swapped them out for a made-up code.
So instead of pick up the red block, it would say something like,
Attack the object from planet X. Something like that.
wow. So the logic of the puzzle is the same, it's just hidden behind this code?
Precisely.
Mm.
And that small change had a huge impact. The AIs that were already struggling with the regular block world, they completely bombed these mystery versions. Their performance plummeted because they were so reliant on recognizing familiar words and patterns.
Yeah.
Once those were gone, they were essentially back to square one.
It's like they were just memorizing the instructions instead of actually understanding the task.
Exactly.
So throwing in a little code really throws these AIs for a loop. But now for the part, everyone's been waiting for OpenAI's o1 model.
It even has a fun nickname, Strawberry.
Strawberry.
Yeah. But cuteness aside, this one is different, or at least that's the hype. They call it a reasoning model rather than just a language model.
That's a good distinction.
Because what does that even mean, AI reasoning? Like, does that mean it actually thinks like we do?
Well, not exactly. We're not talking about AI developing emotions or consciousness or anything like that.
Ah, okay, good to know.
It's more about the AI's ability to take logical steps, to make deductions, and to apply knowledge to new situations, kind of like how we solve problems, but in a more computational way.
So more like how we solve logic puzzles than breaking down the steps.
Yeah, exactly.
So O1 is supposed to be more about thinking through a problem rather than just recognizing patterns like those earlier AI models we were talking about.
Right.
But did it work? Did O1 pass the block test?
Well, the researchers put o1 through those same PlanBench tests, and honestly, the initial results were pretty impressive. On the standard block puzzles, even the ones that involved multiple steps, o1 achieved near-perfect accuracy.
Wow, so no more random block stacking. It was actually planning its moves out in advance.
It seems that way.
Okay, color me impressed, but what about those Mystery Blocksworld puzzles? The ones with the code that completely stumped the other AIs.
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting. While o1 didn't completely solve the Mystery Blocksworld puzzles,
Yeah.
it performed way better than any of the other AI systems they tested. It actually seemed to demonstrate some level of understanding of the underlying logic of the puzzles.
So even though it didn't understand the code, it was still able to make some headway just by, I don't know, picking up on the patterns.
Possibly, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But were these tests maybe a little too controlled? The real world is messy, right? It's unpredictable.
That's true.
So how can we be sure O1 can really handle that kind of chaos?
And that's exactly what the researchers wanted to find out next. They decided to really put O1 to the test.
Oh, this is about to get good. So last we left, our AI friend Strawberry, it was about to face its biggest challenge yet.
Right, because so far it's been pretty impressive. But those were pretty controlled tests.
Yeah, it's not like blocks are going to magically rearrange themselves in the real world. So how'd they make it harder for O1?
Well, first, they just made the puzzles a whole lot harder.
Harder how? Like more blocks?
Yeah, way more blocks. Imagine a table just overflowing with them. More blocks means more possible moves.
And exponentially more ways to mess it up.
Exactly. It would be tough even for us humans to keep track of everything.
So did O1 crack under pressure?
Yeah, this is where we start to see those limitations.
Yeah.
With those simple puzzles, O1, no problem. But with these more complex scenarios, its performance definitely took a hit. It was making mistakes, falling into those same trial and error loops that we saw with those other AIs.
Like its brain got overloaded or something?
Yeah.
Too many blocks?
It's possible, but it gets even trickier. The researchers also wanted to see if O1 could, recognize when a puzzle was just impossible to solve.
Oh, right. You mean like if I gave you a bunch of puzzle pieces, but they were all for different puzzles.
Exactly. So they created these scenarios that, at first glance, looked totally solvable, but hidden in there, a logical contradiction, like a logic trap for AI.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
And what happened? Did O1 fall for it?
Sometimes, yeah. It would just keep chugging away at these impossible puzzles, spitting out these incorrect solutions as if they made perfect sense.
That's a little unnerving, right? It's like it doesn't know what it doesn't know.
That's exactly it. And it's one of the biggest challenges in AI right now, teaching these systems to be aware of their own limitations, to know when to ask for help.
To know when to say, whoa, hold on a second, this isn't right.
Exactly. Because in the real world, that kind of self-awareness, that's crucial.
Makes you think, though, all this thinking O1 is doing, that can't be cheap, can it? All that processing power.
That's another thing the researchers looked at. O1 might be a more powerful planner, but it comes at a cost. Literally. The computational resources needed to run it.
Yeah.
Way higher than for less sophisticated systems.
So what's the takeaway here? Do we go with the cheaper AI, even if it's not as smart, but maybe a little less likely to completely go off the rails?
That's the big question, right? It's a trade-off.
Like so many things in life, there's no easy answer.
Exactly. It really depends on what you're using the AI for.
So if I'm just trying to plan a road trip, a little inefficiency probably won't hurt.
Right, but if it's something with higher stakes, like managing air traffic control or, medical diagnoses.
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. The cost of a mistake, it's way higher.
This has been fascinating and a little bit scary, if I'm being honest.
I get it. But that's why research like this is so important.
Totally.
Because the more we understand how these systems work, the better we can prepare for the future, What are the limitations? What are the ethical considerations?
All good questions.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into AI and planning, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that AI planning isn't science fiction anymore. It's here, and it's only going to get more advanced. But, and I think this is important, we need to approach it carefully, with open eyes, because as with any powerful tool, it's all about using it responsibly.
Wise words. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the future of AI and planning. Until next time, keep those brains engaged, human brains, that is.